Welcome back, everybody. It's another TIMBP Live on this Thursday evening. Thank you so much for being here. Incredibly excited for tonight's stream with RareBird101, Mr. Dave Jennings, who has been on the show before. You've seen him and heard him on other shows in the past as well. He's got a new book that he's working on bringing to us, which we will talk about for sure. I want to say everybody to say hello to everybody in the chat. Excuse me, Dev Patel, Eric Jansen, Emily Chambers, Sugar Kitty. What's up? Donnie the Linux Cat, our blue wrench for the evening as well. Thank you all so much for showing up. I don't know why I'm tripping over my words. I shouldn't be nervous. Maybe I am a little nervous. I don't really know. If you're watching on the replay as well, thank you so much for doing that. Please go ahead, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff, and share it around if you haven't done so yet. You can find all of the ways to do our quote-unquote super chats, which have not actually been integrated into our YouTube channel just yet, but there are links for them down below in the description. The best one to do is tips through Stream Elements because I make the most money off of it, and it helps my daughter, who is eventually going to have to go to college and probably get braces. So I don't know. Anyway, without further ado, I want to bring our guest on for the evening. As I said, he's a turkey magnate. Magnate's not the right word. Connoisseur, we'll say. Super excited to be welcoming him back. Dave Jennings, how are you, buddy?
How's it going, Perry?
I'm doing great, man. Super happy to be welcoming you back on. It's all turkey tonight, of course.
Good deal.
Had to pour just some 101 to get going this evening. I want to ask you this just right off the bat. How do you like the new bottle design?
I like it. It doesn't bother me at all. Not that I had a problem with the old design. I do like the embossed turkey. I think it adds a little bit of classiness to the glass. I do think it'll help compete with some others on the shelf at a price point a little bit higher than it. And I think that's what they're trying to do is, get themselves, a little bit better placement or wherever it's placed to pop out a little bit more. But it's definitely classy. I know there's some people that don't like it, and that's fine. There's people that didn't like the last one when it came out. So what matters most is what's in the bottle. So
that's a really good point too. I at first when I saw it thought it looked a little plain, but I think that was because I saw it on the handle first. So it just kind of looked like they took too many of these small elements that worked really well on a 750 and just stretched them out without really having anything else to fill in that space. But I think the 750 looks amazing. I think it looks way better than what they had before. And I totally agree with you. I think that old label is good, but I think that this is exactly the step up that they needed to kind of bring it into the 21st century, it feels like.
Right. I'm thinking it's taking a cue from Long Branch. If you recall,
absolutely. Yeah.
The Long Branch bottle, well, it's right above me there. They're allowing the liquid to kind of be the center point, and the sticker or the label or whatever you want to call it is the minimal element. So I think that's kind of that direction that they're going, or what they're spinning off from is the Long Branch bottle.
The whole Long Branch as a brand thing, I think caught a lot of us off guard when it happened, but it just makes so much sense for it to be its own thing. And, I think that it does just fine being directly associated, of course, with Wild Turkey, but by allowing McConaughey to take on something totally of himself, right? Totally on his own. With this brand, I think is super cool and really exciting. And I'm hoping that means that there might be more expressions, some slightly different variances as well with Long Branch in the future. I think it'd be really cool to see where they expand that brand.
Yeah, there's a lot of room to grow there. That someone, that's very much a core turkey fan isn't really going to care about, and that's fine. That's a good reason that you put something like that in its own brand. I'm making some assumptions here, but I'm thinking, this is a good, kind of department to put things like liqueurs in, or RTDs, which are ready to drink, canned drinks, this type of thing. If there were a Long Branch, can, cocktail or whatever you want to call it, or like Long Branch and ginger or something like that, I think it would sell very well because you would have that McConaughey image, slender can. I just think it would go hand in hand with sales. They could do some things like Basil Hayden has been doing. You could have these 80 proof, ryes or finished whiskeys or whatever. But I think that, it would probably do better to have some liqueurs like a Long Branch vanilla or something like that. This is just me thinking out loud. I have no inside information, guys, but I think it's it's an area to grow that in and kind of leave turkey alone. But maybe that's just my wishful thinking.
We should have provided that disclaimer at the top of the stream as well. Just in case somebody thought, oh, he's giving us all the inside details and everything. But to be quite honest, this is exactly where my brain went. Long Branch Seltzer. I think that is Clifton right on the nose, and Dev as well said the exact same thing. Right. I could totally see a commercial with McConaughey coming out with a Long Branch Seltzer and just being his old swaggery self.
I think it would do well. I think it would sell well. I think it would also have a trickling effect where someone dips their toes in the pool by picking up the Long Branch and ginger or whatever, and then they maybe reach for the bourbon the next time around. I love that McConaughey drink. I'm going to get his whiskey now. So we'll see what happens, but very possible.
What do you think? And this is something that we've kind of, I feel like, been talking about in little circles over the past couple of years. What do you think is missing from the Wild Turkey lineup as it is right now?
That's a good question, Perry. Obviously, single barrel private selections at full barrel strengths would be a good one. I'd like to see more NCF expressions, particularly rare breed.
For sure.
Which is happening or has happened already. There's actually a travel retail bottle out there right now that's a liter rare breed that's NCF.
No kidding.
Yep. Yeah. Just do a little Google search. Do like a Google image search, but it's rare breed. It's 116.8, but it's in a liter bottle. It comes in a box and it's NCF. I've been told that'll eventually make its way into the States. But I'd like to see that, though. It would be nice if Kentucky Spirit was NCF, or at the least, if you did a private selection, maybe you would have the option to bottle NCF, similar to like, OWA or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't mind seeing some more experimentation on secondary maturation finishes, like cognac finishes or Armagnac finishes, rum finishes. I mean, you got Appleton Estate. It wouldn't be hard to kind of, peanut butter and jelly that thing, but it just, we're just going to have to see. But there's a lot of room to grow. There could be, I would like to see some new rye recipes, or at least one new rye recipe. I think that would be amazing. I'd like to see experimentation with lower barrel entry proof, similar to what they used to have, like a 107. Maybe tuck that juice away for something down the road. There's a lot of areas to grow with Wild Turkey, and I wouldn't mind having some of those RTDs myself. So, they have them in Australia. They have rare breed cola, and Wild Turkey and ginger. And I have actually behind me this way. There's some old bottlings of those RTDs right there. There's a cola and a ginger in cans here. I mean, bottles.
So
see these little bottles here.
Yeah,
those are exports. Those went to Australia. Found their way back to me magically. So they've been doing it in Australia for a while. A lot of people think Beam is doing something new. They're not.
No.
This has been going on for a while now.
So I had Take whiskey reviews on the show recently.
Yep, Jay's a good guy.
Jay's awesome. And we had a conversation about his his hot take in bourbon right now.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And Jay, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything, buddy. But his hot take was that turkey is a little bit behind the times when it comes to these these experimentations and everything. Do you kind of feel that in any way?
He's 100% right. He is. I mean, I agree with Jay. I think that, and to some degree, we have to give Campari a little bit of slack. Campari is not like a company that's familiar with the whiskey business. I mean, they're familiar with the spirits business for sure. Yeah. Okay. Adult beverages, whatever you want to call it. But when it comes to whiskey, particularly American whiskey, Wild Turkey is it. So they've had, roughly 10, 11 years, pushing 12 here, to like figure all this out, which sounds like a long period of time, but it's really not. And you have like a group like Suntory, which is steeped in whiskey experience, and picking up Beam. It's hard to compete against these companies that have had a lot more experience in whiskey. They've taken their blows, they've fallen behind themselves, and they've probably figured out, I'm not letting that happen again. Yeah. So Campari is doing a good job. They're definitely doing, and I'm not knocking Pernod, but Pernod had kind of let Wild Turkey just kind of flounder. Mm-hmm. And I think Campari injected a lot of needed life into the brand. And look, if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure I'm right about this. Last year, I believe, was Wild Turkey's best year ever. And they're a very important part of Campari's portfolio. They're the third largest brand in the Campari portfolio. So Campari is doing things right. Could they do it better? Absolutely. I think that there are areas that they should be branching out into. Unfortunately, last year was tough for everybody.
Sure.
So, I'm actually happy that we're not completely off track here. Like, we have a Master's Keep coming out. We have Russell's 13 coming out. We've got new private barrel selections. So 2020 Delta Blow, but it didn't stop Wild Turkey from making new expressions. So I give them credit for continuing on. I do feel like they're falling a little bit behind, and I'd like to see them a little bit more on the cutting edge.
Yeah, that was something that I remember being not overly concerned about, but it definitely crossed my mind as I was thinking about these products that come out every year, the Booker's batches, all the products in the Master's Keep line, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, now Larceny Barrel Proof as well, and wondering whether or not we were going to have a shortage or just kind of a stoppage once we actually got to 2021. And I'm fully with you. It's nice to see that there hasn't really been that. It's just kind of a,
yeah, and it's not just about the liquid, because I mean, they kept the plant going, but you've got all these people behind the scenes that it takes to make these things work in legal and accounting and design, logistics. These types of things, were impacted, by the coronavirus. Yeah. So I'm glad that we actually have all these things coming out and they weren't delayed, or at least to our knowledge, they weren't delayed.
True.
I think there is a lot of room for Wild Turkey to grow, and maybe they're just being careful. Maybe, we could say, well, they're behind, and I wouldn't disagree with Jay at all on that. At the same time, with all this stuff going on, especially in consideration of last year, being cautious. For example, why, mess something up that's working so well? If last year was their best year ever in sales, do you really want to go and throw a bunch of capital at something that may not work when you're trending so well?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the business side thinking. Now, me, the whiskey enthusiast is like, hell yeah, throw money at that. Let's go. Let's do this, But if I step outside of that bubble, I can see that, I can understand why the suits would want to be careful, because everything's going so well. Why screw it up?
So Eric brings up a good point here. While they may be behind, they have certainly never rushed a product to market. It's consistently great. I think that's a really good point, and one that we do have to take into consideration. That it may be that they haven't put out a bottled and bond product in a while, up until last year. That it took them a good deal of time to expand the rare breed line with Rare Breed Rye. But I think that's actually a good thing for us to talk about as well when we talk about how well they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's in no small part when we consider those two products, right? You've got something as edified as Bottled and Bond and Wild Turkey, who already has a pretty loyal fan base behind them. They put out a product that is supposed to have all of this clout around it. And of course it was going to get bought up. And then a new rye expression as well under Rare Breed.
Mm-hmm.
And Rare Breed, which already, again, had a lot of clout around it, had a lot of fans, people talking it up. I mean, how often do we bring it up on the show? Constantly.
Mm-hmm.
My benchmark is usually, well, would I buy this expensive bottle, or would I just rather go and buy Rare Breed?
Right.
So I think that by building on that brand, they really set themselves up for success last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was the first Master's Keep that I outright bought, so
yeah, I think in terms of whiskey enthusiasm, you're right. The Bottled and Bond and Rare Breed Rye were great timing because the iron was hot and in the hobby, But I don't think that's going to make up enough money to propel them to where they ended up at. I think that was a result of Wild Turkey 101 and Rare Breed 2, Rare Breed 2. But through bartenders, through just like online publications like Gear Patrol and things like this, the stigma of Wild Turkey being the roughneck brand is going away. It's still there, depending on one's age. But I think some of the newer generation aren't viewing it like my generation and the generations before it. I think they're coming in, and Wild Turkey is more of an acceptable quality whiskey. And if they can continue building that reputation and polishing it up and let the old ways die out, just like with Four Roses, what Four Roses is having to do the same damn thing.
Yeah.
Even more so, because at least Wild Turkey was bottling good whiskey. Four Roses wasn't back in the day, so they've got a little bit tougher, but they're doing it. So I think that the majority of the money that Wild Turkey is making is off their core products. It's not off these limited editions, but it helps
sure.
Because all of that, affects the reputation and the prestige and the desire and the demand.
Eric, I agree, Dave. I don't get as many looks when I ask for 101 at the bars here nowadays.
Right. And a lot of these bartenders are wise to it. They know they're using 101. They're using 101 rye. They've developed cocktails around it. It's very acceptable now.
Dev, I wonder if turkey would be good with some malt in it.
I put a survey out a couple of days ago on Twitter, if Wild Turkey, and it was based on an interview that Eddie recently did with a podcast, and the name is slipping from Bourbon Life, I believe. The Bourbon Life.
Sure.
Did a interview with Eddie Russell. It was just like last week or something, at least when it was published.
Sure.
And he had mentioned that he would like to experiment with some new recipes. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. So it got me thinking. I'm like, well, I wonder what Eddie would experiment with. So I put a survey up on Twitter and my Patreon and asked, if Wild Turkey were to do a new recipe, what would you like to see? Another bourbon, another rye, a malt, a wheat. And I should have put a wheated bourbon, but or something like that. I should have put a wheat whiskey, but I can't remember the exact choices. But anyway, what it ended up being is people wanted more bourbon recipes.
Well, yeah.
I want more rye recipes. I'd like, because the rye is so barely
Yeah.
legal. I mean, it's just 52%.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to see it kick up to like 65 or 80 or something. Which
I
Bruce
just say
has talked about as well.
go all the way.
Okay.
Do 95.5, man. Just knock
Yeah,
him dead
well,
with it.
I can tell you that Eddie's not a fan of Indiana rye from the
I believe
conversations I've had with him. He's not
I
a
believe
fan
that.
of the 95.5 mash bill. So I don't know if he would shoot that high. But then again, Bruce would probably love it. And so maybe they'd give him some room to grow, like Little Book or something with Beam.
Yeah,
It
for
would be
sure.
nice to see something like that happen. But anyway, back to the comment about a malted barley or a malt whiskey. I was surprised to see, I think maybe it was 8% or something. There was a 5 to 8% or so. It was a decent little chunk of people that voted for malt. So, who knows? I doubt it'll happen, but hell, I don't know. Eddie might surprise all of us. I'm looking forward to what might happen with this Masters Keep one with the toasted oak. Now it just says notice it says toasted oak. It doesn't say toasted barrel, if I recall. I'd have to go back and look at it. But so it could be staves. It could be something akin to makers. I mean, independent stave is involved, so it could very much be something like that.
Yeah.
We won't know until we try it. But people are like going nuts for this Russell's 13, and I get it. Okay, but it's who knows what it's going to be like. I'm sure it's going to be great. Okay. But I've had like Russell's 2002, 1998. I've had 2003, so, I think that it's going to be more of the lines of maybe something like 2002 if it were a little bit younger. But I'm more excited personally about the Masters Keep just because I want to know what the hell it tastes like. Like I've got an idea of what Russell's 13 is going to taste like, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I have no idea what Masters Keep one's going to taste like. Like I've played around with like blending like Rare Breed with Elijah Craig toasted and all this kind of stuff to try to figure out if I could, like wonder what it's going to be like, and of course I'm just kidding myself, but I did it. I mean, I'm not joking. I really did try that and it was good. Yeah. But I'm just curious as hell what that's going to end up tasting like.
I can't wait to try it either. But I am, of course, incredibly excited for Russell's 13. I know I'm falling into that category, but yeah, the notion behind a toasted oak wild turkey product is so exciting and so invigorating, and just shows, that while they may be a little bit behind, they are still paying attention and they are still trying to work towards innovation and trying to keep up as well, for what it's worth. Eric, I'm all for Bruce getting more in there. Got a pick from Kroger that says with Bruce, and it's amazing.
Bruce is very involved this year with the single barrel program. So
Good.
He's been tasting a lot of the samples that folks are getting to select from because they're not doing on-site selections right now.
Yeah.
So it's not just Eddie doing the tasting. Bruce is pulling samples. So his influence is growing.
That's awesome. Clifton, I didn't realize it was called Masters Keep One. Any significance behind the name?
Yes, so there was a webinar that Campari hosted about secondary maturation with Eddie. He was talking about independent stave and this type of thing, and it briefly came up about Masters Keep One. He couldn't say a lot about it, but it's basically a marriage of profiles. So they're taking whiskey that is Jimmy's preferred profile and whiskey that is Eddie's preferred profile, and they're combining them as one. And then they're taking that and influencing it with some type of secondary maturation of toasted oak, whether it's barrels or staves. I have no idea. Or, they could be doing the same process they do with Long Branch, where they do like a infusion where it's kind of like a tea bag in the bourbon. I have no idea. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, and I've noted this on my blog before, there's a lot of folks who are like, oh man, I just don't like toasted whiskey. I don't like toasted oak. A lot of folks forget that it doesn't have to be 100% toasted to say toasted on it. Like
Right.
take, for example, Knob Creek quarter cask. A very small portion of that was in a quarter cask. The rest of it was plain Knob Creek, and they just blended it together. So in this case, it could be a certain percentage that's toasted and then blended back with straight. We don't know.
Right. Right.
But until we, get all the specs on it and taste for ourselves, there's no need jumping to conclusions or writing it off just because it's got the word toasted on it.
Patrick, I heard that you have to drink it while listening to that certain song by Metallica.
Knock yourself out. Not a bad song.
I probably will at some point, but who's to say? It's not my first thought. Jonathan Mason, Eddie mentioned recently on a podcast that he doesn't know that Bruce will want to be what Jimmy and I are, and he found that interesting. I've always kind of gotten that same feeling about Bruce, that he wants to maybe not be his own person, but kind of define his own role within Wild Turkey.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I have no problem with it.
It's honestly, I hate to say this because a lot of people are going to maybe take this the wrong way or be hard about it. But the old days of the master distiller, the real master distiller, the true master distiller that started sweeping the floors and learned, over 50 years how to do something the right way through hard knocks and trial and error, those days don't really exist anymore. It's a different world. Jimmy is the last of his kind, and Eddie is not too far, from him, because he grew up starting at the bottom, working his way to the top, just like his father, although he had these larger corporations like Pernod and, Campari over his shoulder, whereas Jimmy went with, he was with Austin Nichols, and prior to that for the Gould brothers. And these are corporations, but they're smaller,
Right.
And they didn't really, the corporate world's just different now. The way companies ran in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even the 80s aren't the way they run now. Like everything is so careful, and I just think that whole master distiller role in the romantic sense that we think of, like Elmer and Booker and Parker, this kind of thing is going away. And if, the distillery opens back up with Jimmy sitting there ready to meet people, like you can go for these tours that Bo does, and they're wonderful, and I recommend you do it. But, if we can get Jimmy back in there, please, go see him now, because he's really the last of his kind, and Eddie's not too far behind him in terms of the same type of work ethic. And so anyway, I just think that kind of traditional role is going away. So what will you end up with? Well, that's an interesting conversation. You might end up with roles like head distiller. They could call him master distiller, but it's essentially just a job title.
Yeah.
Leaving what of the family legacy? Well, Bruce could still be there, and he could actually maybe play a larger role in the sense of influencing, the consumer, and spreading the word. Who knows? Who knows what will happen? But I think, having him just sit behind a control panel, is not the best use of his time.
No, I don't disagree with you at all on that. And one of the bigger regrets that I think I will have with the podcast is that I think that last year kind of meant that my chance to interview Jimmy has ended.
Maybe. It just depends on if they open the distillery back up. He's always waiting in line there. You get him on the right day. You could say, hey, you got time for some questions? You never know.
That's true. I want to try to make it, as official as I can. But I mean, if I can just kind of go in guerrilla style and just be like, hey, Eddie, I got my recording.
Campari might not be too happy about it.
That was my thought too.
You could always just, if you just want to know for yourself, go and ask him. If you're going to broadcast it, then definitely do it the right way and get in touch with them.
Sure.
But your chance of interviewing him isn't over.
It just, and part of this is, it's almost like an opinion or a thought that I've had that is a few months old, maybe, as far back as like a year old at this point. But, just with the advent of the vaccines and everything,
Mhm.
and now that we're seeing that people are going to be able to return to a somewhat normal life, in this case, you're right, it might not be over. That chapter might not be closed.
I mean,
So
it's on Monday. I will be past my 2-week period from the second shot, and but tonight for the first time, I went to a restaurant and didn't wear a mask. I was like, it was kind of cool. I should have waited
yeah.
till Monday officially, but it was nice to just I was like, you know what? I think I've got enough immunity. I'm done doing this thing. Of course, it was briefly because I was just doing takeout and sitting around waiting
Sure.
for it. But it was nice to be able to do that without any type of worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, Perry gets arrested accosting Jimmy Russell. It would be your most popular podcast to date.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Danny's Candy's fortunate to visit the distillery a couple of years ago and got to meet Jimmy and got a selfie with him. One of my favorite distillery memories. So Papa Ritter, who popped in here just a second ago. So good evening, everyone.
Cheers.
He and I have an understanding that the Turkey 101 bottle that I have signed by Jimmy will get cracked open and probably finish when the sad time comes that Jimmy is no longer with us.
It's good that you're opening it and drinking it regardless of the occasion, because that's what Jimmy would want you to do.
Absolutely.
I've actually had that conversation in passing with Eddie, and then I know that I talked to a bartender that attended Behind the Barrel, and he said that Jimmy had given them a speech about how at the end of this Behind the Barrel, which is a camp they have for bartenders at Wild Turkey once or twice a year, pre-COVID, they give them special bottles, from Jimmy and Eddie, and this particular Behind the Barrel, Jimmy had given a speech and basically said that, please open the bottles, because that's what we're giving them to you is for you to sip and enjoy. You don't have to open it, that night, but when, at some point in time, open it up and drink it. And I think that's, special bottles should be open and poured. So anyway.
I totally agree. Apparently it brought Dad to tears.
Well, Jimmy might outlive all of us.
That is true, man. That is true. But he also says, Dave, I was given your book last year on Father's Day. I would love it if you could sign it for me one day.
Sure. Yeah. Just if you want me to sign that particular one, just shoot it to me and I'll do it. If not, we'll find another way to make it happen for you.
That works perfectly well, just as well. So let's transition. We've spent the first half hour, of course, just only talking about Wild Turkey, but we do have to talk about not just your new book that you are working on, but also American Spirit as well. So let's chat a bit about the success behind American Spirit, because people have freaking loved it, man.
Well, I mean,
and from I haven't been fortunate enough to read all the way through it, but for what I have been able to read, it's just been spectacular.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it makes sense for you to have some kind of follow-up in many ways, but I'll allow you to talk about the post-release world of American Spirit.
Well, COVID screwed a lot of stuff up. Like, it was supposed to be a hardback, and it was supposed to come out earlier than it did, and it was a big mess. It got to a point where I was talking to my publisher, and they were like, well, if you want to do the hardback, it could be another 6 to 9 months or more, because all these things are printed and bound in Asia. And, we're talking like March, and everything was just locked the hell down. Like, you were not getting anything off a boat,
Sure.
And, I was done. Everything was done. It was all complete. And I'm like, if I sit there and this thing waits another year to be released, it's behind already, because like the last expression in its cornerstone, and it talks about Jimmy and Eddie's 101 anniversary and this type of stuff, and Jimmy's 65th. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just, if we have to go paperback, let's just do, paperback. And I was like, well, at least I'll be helping a domestic business. So, a lot of business was down for these printers. So I was able to, through my publisher, we found somebody that had the capabilities to print it the way we wanted it printed. And so we did a first run and sold out within a month. And then we did a second printing, and that's getting close to selling out. And there was a couple days there where it was number one on Amazon in the spirits category or whatever.
Sure.
I got some screenshots to save it. I don't use the bestseller kind of stuff. I think that's kind of, I don't really think it's kind of, cheesing out if you just have it for a day or so and then call yourself bestseller. But
sure.
But it did really well. But I think the sales part was just that was just kind of like icing on the cake. I think what made me the happiest, what gave me the most personal satisfaction, was hearing feedback from people that loved it so much. Because whenever I had finished my manuscript and I had given it to some people, I got some kind of iffy stuff, like, well, it doesn't really read like a history book. It's a little bit too personal. I don't think, people are going to like this, I'm not sure what audience you're going for, this type of stuff. And,
sure.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's not good. So like, I was like worried, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm putting it out, and, let the chips fall where they may. And the response was awesome. It was like, God, this was, so neat to follow your journey. Cause that's essentially what it is. It's my journey into wild turkey. And it's told very much from a perspective. There's a lot of history in it.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of fact checking and worked with a lot of individuals to make sure that the information was accurate. But there's some commentary, like as you go through, it has a very personal feel to it. And I think that people liked that, actually. I think they liked reading something that wasn't the plain Jane. Not that I'm not knocking anybody's history or bourbon book out there, but there's a certain kind of cadence that a lot of these books have, where they're trying to be factual and scholarly. And mine is not that. Mine's factual, but it ain't scholarly. I use contractions. I say ain't. I say damn and hell and shit and stuff. And like, and so it's a little bit different. But the feedback was great. Reading people's reviews was wonderful. And Victor did a jam up job on the photography.
Yeah, he did.
Even if you don't read a lick, you just look at the pictures, I think you'll be happy. It's worth the money just to like look at all these cool pictures of Dusty's that he did such a great job photographing. So that's, why I decided that, my next book, I originally was going to do something else, which I still may. So I need to kind of just not mention that right now. But when I got to this second book, I'm like, I think I'm going to kind of do the same thing, because, I knew that my blog anniversary was coming up, and I thought it would be cool to have like a book where I've kind of like greatest hits book, where I went back through the 5 years of my blog and 280 something posts and pulled my favorite ones, and do like a print on demand thing, like through Amazon or a local printer or something for my Patreon supporters. The more I got thinking about it, I'm like, well, if I'm going to do all this, I might as well just like do it right and make it a nice book. So I threw the Kickstarter up there, about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, it was, I had an initial goal of $10,000 and reached that within a few days, which was amazing.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
That is so awesome.
So it's like I told all my Kickstarter backers that, I want them to know that, every dime that goes into that campaign is going right back into that book. And the more I raise, the nicer that book is going to be. So I'm working with the same designer that did American Spirit. The cover is already up on Kickstarter. If you want to look at it, wildturkeybook.com/Kickstarter, you'll see the cover. And Ricky did an amazing job there. And I've been talking with Victor about coming back for this next book. We haven't tightened all that up yet, but it's looking very good. And if I can raise a little bit more, I'd like to have an artist do some original sketches, and it's going to be like a greatest hits. But then I'm also injecting some fresh perspective by making commentary on every post. So I'm not just reprinting what was on my blog. I'm going back and I'm adding my notes to what I was going through at the time or why I wrote it. Adding some charts and some graphs, and I'm not rehashing any of the pictures from my blog. It's going to be a fresh take. And then of course it's going to be professionally copyrighted and proofread and all that. So it's going to be it's going to flow as a book. And I hope it does just as well as American Spirit. If not, I'm going to be happy with it because I'm just as much passion as I put into American Spirit, I'm putting into Wild Turkey Musings.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. And I'm really excited to see whatever this actually becomes too, once you've, solidified it. And of course,
it's a fun process. You just don't, you have so many, like putting together this last book, I had an idea of what I thought it would look like, and it ended up being something totally different, but I was cool with that because you have different people that you're working with. So you have, like I was working with Victor, I was working with Ricky Frame on the design. I was working with my folks at Mascot Books, and they're, throwing in their ideas about flow and editing. And when you end up with this final product, it's different than what, you originally planned. But I was very, very happy. So it'll be fun to go through that process again. It's kind of a nightmare too, because you're stressed out all the time. You're like, you think you got it all down, and you find something wrong, and you're like, oh, I got to fix this. And anyway,
yeah. I want to put a pin in that because I do have a follow-up question for you.
Okay.
But Donnie is asking, will there ever be a hardbound copy of American Spirit?
Yes. I'm not going to reprint. So I'm going to be doing a third printing soon. I'm going to just keep it paperback because I don't want to just do a cash grab. I don't want to make it where it's like anybody that had the paperback is just going to want to get the hardback, and then I get double the money. I don't believe in stuff like that. I don't like when whiskey companies do it, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do a second edition. So
okay.
Yeah, the next thing, as soon as Wild Turkey Musings is complete, I'm going to do a second edition of American Spirit. There's going to be more expressions. It's going to be more history, more, basically, more pictures, and make it worth your money, because I don't want somebody forking over $20 again and then this is the same exact thing with a hardback. So the answer is yes, but the answer is also not yet.
Danny's Candies. Not that I'm opposed to hard copies, but can you get American Spirit digital?
Absolutely. You can go to iBooks. You can go to Amazon. And if you don't like either of those formats, you can get a PDF copy as well. If you go to I think it's on my link tree, if you want a PDF version. If not, you can go to my blog and search for American Spirit, and in one of those posts about it, there's a link to get the PDF version. But most people want the EPUB, the Amazon version or the iBooks version.
Sure. So I think I pretty much know what your answer to this question is going to be, but Dev was asking, what is your opinion of Kentucky Spirit? Maybe I was bottle unlucky.
I've got a lot to say about Kentucky Spirit.
Kentucky Spirit. Sorry. I think I said American Spirit.
Oh, well, either way.
What's your opinion about your book, Dave?
It's awesome. No,
there you go.
Kentucky Spirit. Okay. I'll tell you this, Devin. I don't think there's a way for me to get out everything I need to get out in enough time here for us to talk about other things. But I will say this. Kentucky Spirit has in comparison to, let's say, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, the floor is lower, but the ceiling can be higher. It honestly can. But it's a roll of the dice. So I would recommend go to RareBird101.com, go into the search bar and type in Kentucky Spirit. And I have not just reviews. Okay. I've got articles about Kentucky Spirit. Kentucky Spirit has become kind of an enigma in a way to me. It's like this expression that Wild Turkey just hasn't quite figured out how to make it work anymore. It used to be the only single barrel expression that was offered regularly in the United States.
Right.
And then they come out with Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, and it's kind of like Kentucky Spirit just didn't really fit as well anymore. And then they changed the bottle design. And you're like, what the hell? It's like they keep punishing it. They're like, it's like, damn, take away the pewter top, give it a wood top. Take away the color sticker, give it a monochrome sticker, give it a cheaper cork, and then just put it in a rare breed bottle, So
I think what my personal opinion, but I think one of the things that might be keeping people from purchasing it over something like Russell's Single Barrel is the price tag. I think that it's a little too expensive,
and people have it. I agree with you, but people need to understand the history of it. So when Kentucky Spirit came out, it was to compete directly with Blanton's. I mean, Kentucky Spirit is in some ways a Blanton's knockoff. You have an ornate glass. Okay, it used to have a pewter top, so you had an ornate glass, a pewter top, and it had a box. Okay, the first year it came out with handwritten barrel detail information around the neck. So it very much had that Blanton's kind of quality to it, and so it was priced to compete with Blanton's, and it has stayed priced to compete with Blanton's. The problem is when they came out with Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, which is better specs, because it's NCF at 110 proof. You basically, and it's not chill filtered. So Kentucky Spirit is chill filtered. So you've basically just, kind of devalued it. And ironically, Kentucky Spirit is actually, I looked at the wholesale prices one time and it was like $1.50 or $1.75 or something more expensive than Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. So it's
okay.
It like I said, there are literally articles on my blog about it, because every once in a while I'll just go through this whole what the hell's going on with Kentucky Spirit, but then I'll flip flop too. I'll have some amazing Kentucky Spirits and I'll be like, oh man, Kentucky Spirit is where it's at. And it's like I said, it's quite the enigma in my mind. I would love to sit down with Campari one day and, say, look, let's rein this in, and the liquid can stay the same, but let's kind of give people a package that's worth having, especially if we're going to charge the price that we're charging for it.
Absolutely. Robert Warren, Kentucky Spirit is 101 in a tuxedo. Eddie Russell's words.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, it's 101 proof, just like, but it has a certain profile, and you can have, at worst case scenario, you're going to end up with a single barrel 101, which, trust me, I wouldn't be happy about paying $60 or whatever, $65 for a bottle of 101. But at least it's drinkable. It's not like, you've ended up with a drain pour,
Yeah, of course.
But that's not often. Most of the time, Kentucky Spirit has a finesse to it. It's got subtleties.
Sure.
It's got doesn't have the core 101 profile. It has something else. Usually, it's like I said, it's more finessed, but sometimes it can be more robust. Sometimes you can get lucky and it can just be straight up dusty. And there's an article on my blog about a 2015 Kentucky Spirit that I swear to God, Perry, and Bruce has tasted it, and Ryan Albies at Justin's House Bourbon has tasted it. It is straight up freaking dusty, dude. I'm not one of these people that are like, yeah, dude, this Kentucky Spirit's so dusty. I'm like, no, I'm telling you straight up, I've got my share of dusty turkey, and there is something going on with this barrel that it is dusty as hell. And so, we've kind of come up with all these theories, well, maybe it's a diamond throwaway barrel, or maybe it's a Russell's 98 throwaway barrel or something.
Yeah.
But something happened with that particular barrel, and we don't know what it is, but it is straight up dusty funk.
You've also made your opinions on Dusties very clear recently.
Yeah, they're not worth it. I mean, I gotta hate to say that, they're just not worth it now.
So does that even, and just for anybody who hasn't, read that article that you published, what it basically got down to is that you can find products that are just as good, if not better, at a more affordable price. Correct?
Sure. Yeah. And not even bourbon. I've had, brandies and stuff that blow away some of these Dusties that people are paying like $2,000 for, and I'm like, give me a break, I recently participated in a cast selection of a 25-year cognac with a Bourbon Pursuit and Mash and Drum and Jay and John, and I'm telling you, it's spectacular, and it's $189, but I guarantee you, when you taste it, you'll be like, oh my God, like this is worth every penny of that $189. So
that is
not
really
trying to get off the
well,
yeah, for 25 years and 110 proof, no dosing or anything like that. And I'm not trying to get us off the turkey subject. I'm just saying that if you want to get adventurous, don't get adventurous by paying $2,000 for a bottle of cheesy gold foil. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. You're not going to taste $2,000. If you want to go in with a bunch of buddies and y'all are going to like split it and like have a good time one night for something special, bachelor party, whatever, by all means do that. If you've got the money to blow and it's not going to hurt you financially, by all means do it. But for the average person out there listening that feels like they have to have a cheesy gold foil in your collection, you don't. Don't do that. You can spend. You just imagine what else you could spend on. I'm not talking about just bourbon. I mean, things that you need for your home and things. So there's no reason to pay $2,000 for a whiskey.
I couldn't agree more. To be honest, it's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's like a couple mortgage payments.
Yep. If you want to and you can, go for it, but don't feel like you have to because everybody on Instagram is putting a picture of it out there.
Exactly. Jim Morris says the first step would be getting it out of the rare breed bottle in that package. It's forced to be compared to it.
Yep. Amen to that.
I can't agree with you more on that.
There's an article about that.
So let's talk about what we've been drinking tonight as well.
Okay.
We haven't even mentioned this.
Okay.
And you posted on social media about this, that you were going to be pulling from your handle of WB Hackle, which is the best name in the world for a personal blend. But it's a blend. It's equal parts RareBird101, Camp Nelson A Russells, Camp Nelson F Russells, and Russell's 10-year.
Exactly.
Okay. Yay.
And what you end up with is a whiskey that is pretty much the exact same proof as WB Snapple and a profile that is very, very comparable. And I spent a lot of time on this blend trying to get it right. And this was a couple years ago. And when I finally hit it, I was like, I've played with a lot of blends. There's a lot of bourbon blends I've created and enjoyed and this kind of thing. But Hackle is the only one that I continually repeat. I do like doing like taking like a 10-year Russell's Reserve single barrel and mixing it with Russell's 10, and you end up with 100 proof, like basically a 101 10-year,
Yeah.
I like doing that one a lot, but I'll usually just do that in my glass. But Hackle is one that I make and bottle. So this is my very first batch I ever made of Hackle.
So cool.
And I've kept it and just slowly sipped it down, because after I got about halfway through with this, I made a handle of it, which is behind me. You can't really see it's covered up with a bunch of bottles, but I made a handle of Hackle, and that's what I usually pour from. That was my first drink tonight. So now I'm on the original batch, and I like my original batch better. So the single barrels that went into this one must have been of higher quality than the ones that went into my handle. But they're comparable. They're just subtle differences. But if you and the real test is to do it blind. I think you did it one night, didn't you? I think I remember watching you do like a blind or something with Hackle and Snapple.
I don't know if I did it. I did compare them one night. I don't think that I did it blind, though. I think it was a very spur of the moment thing that I did on a stream. But yeah, I did compare the two a while ago. But I want to talk about Robert's comment here. Hackle is your shining star. Forget the book, man.
It works. I will pat myself on the back for Hackle because it does work. I mean, there's a lot of blends out there, like I said, I've messed with. But Hackle's one for me that I continually use. And Snapple's not cheap. It's $50 for a 375. unless you find it on sale or something. And
Yeah.
now I don't even know if you can find it. So if you taste them side by side, especially blind, you will not be able to tell the difference. If you don't do it blind, you might say, okay, well, this one's mouth feels a little bit different, or maybe whatever. There's a little bit of difference here and there. But blind, you can be like, well, this one's a little bit different, but you can't tell which one's Saffel. It's like it's that close. But it's an easy blend. It was a lot easier back in 2019 because CNA and CNF picks were freaking everywhere, so it was like not hard to find. Now, not so easy, but there were so many of them that it's not hard to get your hands on a couple. And another thing is too, don't feel like you have to make a handle worth or even a 750.
Yeah.
Fill up an old 375 or just make it in your glass, do a little thing in your glass. Do a 1/4 ounce of each, and you got a good little pour there.
Absolutely. Want to touch on this real quick. Eric Smith, speaking of Instagram, appreciate RareBird for quick responses on social. We talked turkey and anime one day, and it was awesome.
Well, thank you, Eric. I try to respond to everybody. It's tough. I do get some requests. A lot of times I don't see them because they're not people that I'm aware of a following, and so you get them they come from another into another bin or whatever you want to call it, and I have to go retrieve them. But I try to answer everybody because everybody's passionate about wild turkey.
Yeah.
If you're passionate enough to send a message, you feel like you do a response. I also try to story people. People post their wild turkey pours and they tag me. I'm happy to story it. Just don't put your kids on it or something obscene or racist or something like that, because it just ain't happening. And I hate it too, because I've had some people like take these cool pictures at like family gatherings or something. It's like, I can't do this because this has people in it, and like I don't want to story children and stuff. So sorry, but if you tag me and you have a cool pour post, I will story it. Happy to.
Eric said wild turkey is straight up in the series Trigun. So a little Easter egg for
I remember that. Yeah, I remember he sent me some stuff on that. Yeah. That's cool.
So Eric, one more time for this is
sure
one of the other Erics, of course.
Yeah,
we got a lot of Erics in my community for some reason.
It's pretty easy. It's equal parts, so you can't screw it up. Russell's 10, RareBreed 116.8, Camp Nelson A Russell's Reserve single barrel pick, and a Camp Nelson F Russell's Reserve single barrel pick. You can do 5th or 6th floor on the CNF, so both of those floors were available. And then CNA, I've only seen 4th floor anyway. So, but give it a try. I've been asked, is there a way to do it with the 2020 selections? And right now the answer is no. I don't really have that vibe that I got from Hackle with those. If I did, I would probably have to use a Rickhouse S as one of the elements, and I'm too greedy with my Rickhouse S barrels to want to do a Hackle with them. They're not that many of them out there. But I'll tell you this. So I've picked 4 barrels already this year. I've got 4 left to go. But I picked 2 Tyrone Fs, a McBrayer B, and a Camp Nelson A. The Tyrone F is just, it has this amazing woodiness to it that's just really deep and sweet. And I think that with the CNAs from this year will get you close to it doesn't have as much of that prickly spice and cherry cola that the CNFs did, but it's got its own little thing that I think will probably translate into a pretty decent Hackle, but I won't know until I have a chance to play with those.
I don't think I've ever had a Warehouse S before, so they're great on my radar for a little while.
Yeah, they have a very intense kind of cedar-like woody spice, kind of potpourri, cigar box, something. It has this real kind of it's a lot of spice, and a lot of woodiness. Earthy. They're not the heavy earthy tones like soil. It's more like the lighter earthy tones.
That's really cool.
Fragrant earthy tones. So find one. And I highly recommend the S Kentucky Spirits, especially. S really shines at 101 proof. I don't know why it is. I think because it sweetens up and it's not so herby. But anyway, highly recommended.
That's awesome, Dave. We are just about out of time here, but I
Oh, man, okay.
I wanted to once again say thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry that we're kind of limited to an hour on live streams here, but you know, it's just happy to chat with you at all. People find you on social media at RareBird101, right?
That's right. You can find me at Instagram at RareBird101. You can find me on Twitter at RBird101. My website is RareBird101.com. I have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/RareBird101. And then my Kickstarter is wildturkeybook.com/Kickstarter. If you want to kick in a few dollars on my new book, or there's other rewards there to get signed copies, to get your name in the book, all kinds of different rewards. So check it out on Kickstarter. It's Wild Turkey Musings. And I greatly appreciate your support. And thank you, Perry, for having me on. Really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, man. We kind of just chatted like a couple weeks ago about having you on, and I just casually dropped, do you want to come on and talk about the book? And you said, for sure.
Love to.
So we'll make sure that we get the link out as well to listeners of the show and whatnot. Happy to support, happy to help as much as we can. If you want to follow this show, it's at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm at pritter1492 personally. We also have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/MyBourbonPodcast for as little as $1 a month. $5 a month gets you some bonus content, which includes pregame chats, which come out before every episode of the podcast.
And y'all support Perry, because I do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave.
We support each other. Yeah.
I don't want to leave Nick hanging here. He had asked a question.
Sorry. I pulled it up too.
But it said, at what point do we just give RareBird one his own Wild Turkey product screw pig and just yearly? Hey, take that and send it to Kapari. Thank you.
We could do just your own blend of like 5 or 6 barrels of 101. I think that would be cool.
Oh, that'd be great. Awesome. But I will say, no, I greatly appreciate them letting me do barrel picks every year. So, but yes, thank you, Nick. That was awesome.
Awesome. Well, once again, Dave, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you next week for another TIMBP Live. But until then, I'm Perry, and this is TIMBP Live. So, yeah.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody. Cheers.